And welcome. We have one more episode here of the looking outlook on Virginia storms, and specifically tonight, Andrew Smith and I will be talking about the marginal risk that's set up for tomorrow here in Virginia. We may touch on Saturday a little bit, but Saturday's looking like things are going to be happening further and further south. So welcome. I'm Chris White here at Roanoke. Andrew's in Richmond, and we'll take a look at the setup. But before we do that, I actually went out locally today, and I can't say that I chased. I spotted. I went a couple places around the area. So let me pull up some pictures here and see what we can show you. Let's see. Let's do a screen share, and we shall look at that. And this was in Roanoke. Actually, I'm overlooking the airport here, looking kind of west across the airport. You can see the storm base as it's approaching here. It really wasn't. There was no severe today, at least in this area. There just wasn't enough shear. It was very little shear, plenty of cape, a lot of instability. But this was kind of cool, and I just watched this come at me for a while, and I videoed it, and actually was able to pull a frame grab off of one of the CGs, the cloud to ground strikes, because there was some pretty good looking strikes coming down, and I happened to catch this one just right. So it was kind of an interesting storm. Actually, if I can pull this other one up here, let's see. I'll just leave this up because I want to talk about some other stuff here. But I actually tracked this storm, had a hail core develop on it just west of the valley, and it was indicated as half-inch hail. So I said, what the heck? I actually moved about 2 or 3 miles north and east and intercepted the hail core. Had about 3 or 4 minutes of pea-sized hail, pea-sized smaller, I would say, hail, and wind gusts probably to 30 knots or better, maybe 35. It rocked the car a couple times. And then some street flooding. And if we get a little bit of time later, I've got a short video clip I can show of the street flooding. So that was some pretty cool stuff that was just local here. After it was done, the sun came out, I went back home. It was like 5 minutes from home. So that's kind of a good chase as far as I'm concerned.
That's about the same as the storms we had roll through here about 7:30 or so. Just a little weak line of storms. It actually, typical with weak storms that seem to come through Richmond, it kind of weakened right as it moved into the metro area and kind of rejuvenated itself as it moved over and headed east. But we didn't get any hail here, but some decent nearby strikes of lightning. It was able to flicker the power at the house a couple times, but decent rain, not enough to wash all the pollen away, I don't think, but kind of satisfies the storm needs when nothing's going on.
And especially when you don't want to have to go out and do anything else, right?
Mm-hmm. So. When you can do a static core punch at your own house, it's not as long as it's not a tornadic core punch, it's not a bad deal.
Exactly. So, well, let's switch the gears. We'll start talking about the next setup, the next couple of days. I think I've got here we go. Here's the SPC outlook for tomorrow. So, excuse me, with a marginal risk covering just about every part of Virginia except the very northern tip up there, as you see. This was expanded from this morning because this morning the area that was covered was kind of more the southern half of Virginia, and now it's been shifted up to the north. And just to give you a real quick glimpse here, that's Friday, so that's the marginal risk, and then this is Saturday. Originally, Saturday was thought that maybe some of this area would be a little further north in Virginia, but the models have been shoving everything down to the Carolinas, but mainly North Carolina, because of the wedge just being forced in from the top. So let me come back to here.
My least favorite weather terminology.
Yeah, I mean, you go out to the plains and you say the word wedge, and it has an entirely different meaning than it does here.
Mm-hmm. East Coast wedges are horrible. Middle of nowhere, Great Plains wedges are sights to behold.
So, all right. Well, let me set the stage here for other than that for tomorrow. I've got a couple of screens up. Let's go to this one, and here we go. This is the and let me go to that screen on here. This is the World Weather Prediction Center. If I can come on, get my screen to show here. Got it. All right. This is the Weather Prediction Center outlook for the next couple of days. Here we are. I've got it set on, if you can see this, this is 0Z or 8 p.m. tonight, Friday 0Z. And if I advance it forward to 12Z or 8 a.m. tomorrow, here's the surface outlook for Friday at 8 o'clock. And you notice that here's the front that is advancing northward. Here's a cold front that's from the west. And here we are in Virginia in the warm sector of this cyclone that's going through. And what's actually happening here, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, is this there's a surface low and a short wave at the upper levels that's going through the Great Lakes area. And we're just on the southern edge of it. And we'll talk about that some as we go. And then we have the front coming through Virginia, across Virginia during the afternoon, and then kind of stalling out right around dark, and then afterwards kind of stalling out along the, as you see, the Carolina line. So that's why that wedge is setting up there. To talk about the upper levels, here's the 500 millibar, or about 18,000 feet above the ground, the wind speeds. And you can see up here at the top, as I scroll this back and forth, the red area, and this is 21Z Friday, that's 5 p.m. tomorrow. The red area and the yellow areas are very strong winds. This is above 75 knots. This is 50 knots. And down here in Virginia, we're kind of on the southern fringes of this. And you notice that as you go further north into Virginia, the stronger the upper level winds get. And this is the GFS model, by the way. So that probably means, and Andrew and I talked about this a little bit off the air, that may mean that when the day one convective outlook comes out for tomorrow for the storm predictions from the Storm Prediction Center, if there's going to be any increase in the marginal risk, it's probably going to be further north in Virginia. If they would happen to go to a slight risk, it would be up here in this area. What do you think about that, Andrew?
Yeah, I'd agree. Just looking at I'm looking at the 3K NAM on my screen. The Cape's about the same throughout the state. So if you're pushing a little more upper level shear further north, I think that could entice them to bump things up. If it's going to bump up anywhere, it would be up there, just because you got the better shear with about the same amount of instability throughout the entire state. So I would agree with that assessment.
Did I lose you?
Screen just unfroze for me.
Okay. Yeah, my internet may be going in and out. Do you want to screen share that reflectivity to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, let me pull it up here. Let me do this a second. I've been looking at more soundings throughout the state. Just kind of the 3K NAM likes the northern part of the state and the southern part of the state, but kind of central part of the state is right where it wants to kick things down to a little less severe category. But all right, let's see here. Reflectivity's up. Let me screen share this. And all right. So you should be seeing reflectivity here.
Got it.
And this includes updraft helicity in it as well. This is the 3K NAM looking at 21Z tomorrow, so about 5 o'clock rush hour. And it's pretty quiet across Virginia, but the thing it's picking up on is a pretty sizable cell right dead center on Stafford County, just on the edge of Fredericksburg. And you might be able to make out there's a little track of red right around it, and that's where it's picking up a kind of a spinning updraft track on it. If I advance it forward 3 hours, it kind of fills in the rest of the state with more storms firing. I guess probably on the leading edge of the cold front pushing through. You can see it's just more scattered, kind of isolated, but clustered convection to the south, or more clustered to the north, a little more scattered to the south. Nothing very widespread, to say the least. I think that might be another factor that would keep them from bumping things up to slight, especially in the southern Virginia. It's just the lack of coverage.
Right.
But based on this, the amount of coverage in the northern part of the state, especially if you got some rotating updrafts up there, you could be looking at a severe hail risk. I wouldn't, given the unidirectional winds and the high cloud bases, I don't think there's any kind of tornado threat for tomorrow.
Yeah, I think you mentioned at least off the air, you mentioned the LCLs were pretty high for tomorrow. So that would kind of
Mhm.
dictate probably, or if you got a rotating updraft, you're talking large hail.
Yeah, and every sounding I've looked at has had pretty much winds straight out of the west, maybe a little southwest at the surface, but not much to really kick up a good spin.
Right, right. All righty. Let's see.
Flip.
I think I
I can
had,
I'll pull up a cape on this too, just to kind of show what, there's going to be a decent amount of instability across the state. This is at 0Z here, so it's kind of the cape's being sucked up by the storms. But here's 21Z. You can see any kind of in the mid thousands, 1400, 1300. And if I jump back one more hour before convection gets firing, it's a little high. Oh, excuse me. Oh, mixed layer. Let me get surface base. Thought that was strange. It looked lower than I was looking at earlier. So around 21Z, it's picking up on some decent levels of Cape throughout the state, pushing 2,000 in some spots. So the instability is definitely going to be there. And here on the East Coast, you don't seem to need the monster Cape as much as you do out west to get some storms to fire.
yeah, exactly. And as we've talked before, that even, the storms may be smaller here, but that means they don't require as much, as strong a dynamic to put things
Mhm.
out. So
Yeah.
I think I've got something up here. Let me share this. Come on, baby. Okay. This is if I pull it up here a little bit more. This is tomorrow afternoon. This is one of the WRF runs, and it has a little more coverage in the state than the 3K NAM. You can see. Let's go back. This
Yeah,
is
it's a little more
21Z.
robust there.
Yeah, but it is kind of the stronger stuff does look like it's more a little bit further north, and then it kind of sags. You see these cells up here across northern Virginia, going
Mhm.
across the northern neck and across the bay, and then there's a break, and then there's some more, let's say, less robust storms along the south. So,
Right.
you know, I think a slight risk for tomorrow probably is debatable, just because there will be stronger storms and stronger dynamics up north, but the coverage, like, as you mentioned before, there's not going to be that many storms, it doesn't look like, between these two models, and a
Yeah.
couple of other models I've looked at as well. However,
Yeah.
let me switch to this screen. This is a sounding near Richmond at 21Z, or 5 p.m. tomorrow. This is from the GFS, which is usually the most conservative, shall we say. And if you look at this, the winds are pretty unidirectional. You've got about a little over 30 knots of surface to 6 kilometer shear, but they're talking 3,400 surface base Cape in the Richmond area. That's very robust.
That's a juicy environment.
And with that kind of environment, LCLs again are fairly high. You can see at this level right here, if you can see my cursor. So we're still talking about probably hailers, in terms of what the main mechanism would be. And if any of those stronger winds, of course, get pulled down in a downdraft, you could get 30, 40 knot winds. So and the other thing is, from a chasing perspective, if you were to happen to go out in the Richmond area there, Andrew, if you look down here, the forward speeds are in the 30 knot range. So it's more reasonable than what has been happening. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I'll take 30 over 60 any day.
Right, and the photographs don't look too bad, but it in general, and it actually the GFS is signaling this as a severe setup, whereas I think the NAM was talking about marginal severe. So kind of surprised they've reversed roles here.
Yeah, I was clicking throughout the state on the soundings for the 3K NAM, and if I went to Northern Virginia, it was severe. If I went to Southside Virginia, it was severe. But right along the 64 corridor, it was sticking to the marginal. And I've said this off air. I take those things with a grain of salt sometimes. I've seen more PDS tornado things here in Virginia on the 3K NAM, which you're lucky to even get a tornado warning on some of those days. So I don't base my forecast solely on it, but I like to see what it's picking up on to see if I'm in the same ballpark as it.
Exactly, and that's for any of these forecast soundings, or even the SPC outlooks. I take those with a grain of salt. They're more a pointer, if you will, like an indicator. Say, hey, pay attention here, look here. But a lot of times, and you'll see this as we saw today in the day two, they expanded the marginal risk area to cover some changes in the models.
Mm-hmm.
And that can also happen overnight too. When the 0Z models come out, actually they finished their runs, I guess, about 45 minutes ago, and they start getting published. They may show some changes as well. So we'll have to take a look at those in the morning.
I mean, you and I know from our experience chasing out in the plains that you can go to bed one night thinking you're chasing Kansas, and you wake up the next day and you're hightailing it to central South Dakota. So, a lot of things can change very much overnight, especially with bigger setups. Setups like these, I mean, they can change about the same amount, but on bigger setups, you're really more tuned into it.
Right. Or even one that I remember that you and I were on out there where we were actually heading to a target area. The day ones and the midday day ones came out. We pulled off the road and turned around and went 180 degrees, went the other direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because things had changed that much in the models that morning.
Yeah. Fly by the seat of the pants sometimes,
So, and as far as so that's tomorrow. Looks like things are going to happen, mid to late afternoon. I don't think this is going to be an early day thing from the advance of the front that it's coming across and when the instability builds. So I'm thinking, 3 o'clock on for any action. Probably in the Richmond area east of 95, you're probably looking at 6-ish or later.
Mm-hmm.
So and again with it getting dark about 8, that kind of cuts down on the chasing time, unless you just like to chase after dark. That's a different thing.
Hey, there hasn't been a whole lot of lightning with these storms that have come through here recently. So as little as I do night chase, there's been nothing to see with the storm. So
Exactly.
I'm going to pull up the Cape for Saturday just to show you what the NAM is thinking with the wedge, and it has the wedge pushing all the way into North Carolina. So at least according to this, the SPC is being even pretty bullish with their marginal risk going into all of North Carolina, because this is 21Z Saturday afternoon, and I mean you can see there's nothing up here, and even in North Carolina it's pretty marginal.
Right.
And there's the edge of that wedge, and right there, I haven't looked at any of the. See if we can see what the temperatures are gonna be like at the surface. See if we can pick up the boundary there. And
Yeah. I think the earlier in the day, I was looking at this earlier as a possibility of chasing the front, actually, like 12Z tomorrow in that neighborhood was going to be along the North Carolina Virginia border. Mm-hmm. And then later in the day it was going to sag further south. So if you're looking at 21Z there, that makes a lot of sense that would be the case, because I was actually thinking about chasing on Saturday, going to Martinsville and then heading west a little bit on 58 in that corner where if you saw the wedge was kind of heading down in that direction. My thought was that if you can get in there ahead of the wedge with some instability and have a storm interact with that boundary, it might be interesting. The problem is the models aren't that precise, and if you look in that area, and I actually did some looking today. I've been down there chasing before, but I also looked at some maps in the North Carolina regions just south of there. There's not that many clearings. There's not that many vantage points. So you really have to be within almost like a 10 to 15 mile area to be able to see something, and the models just aren't that good.
It's interesting. As much as the NAM has that wedge pushing North Carolina, just looking at the reflectivity, it's picking up on storms firing across Southside Virginia down your way, Roanoke and Martinsville. So it's almost like there's going to be elevated storms sitting above the wedge, feeding on some instability sitting above the cool, stable air. So there could be some storms down there, but you're just not going to be able to see anything.
Exactly, and that's what the overall forecast is down here for tomorrow and Sunday, is just heavy rain. And you're right, there will be some thunder, some elevated convection, some thunder with it, but it's just going to be a scuzzy day, low overcast, and you're not going to be able to see any storm bases, but it's just going to rain like crazy. So that my thought of chasing on Saturday was like, I don't think so.
Yeah, you'd have to dive pretty far south, and even then for a barely marginal setup, it's not worth the trip.
Yeah, and that section, once you start getting close to the mountains in Southwest Virginia, and then also in North Carolina, there's just the road systems is even worse than it is in other places, and the vantage points just aren't there. So, trust me, I've been down there scouting around, and it's just it's hard to see.
My experience with North Carolina was only once. It was back on the April 16th, back in 2011, that big outbreak down there. And, I was anywhere from Raleigh east, and that wasn't bad, but you still had a lot of trees to deal with. It was fairly flat. Vantage points would only be for a couple miles or so. And then you were kind of in another group of trees as you went through a swamp, and then you emerged into another farm field. So it's better to terrain than what I got here around Richmond for sure. But it's still no Northwest, or Central Plains or anything like that.
Yeah, I still have my eyes on Ohio. When you get a good setup, come through there and maybe pop up that way and do a chase. But so far, nothing has happened. Nothing has transpired to where I thought it would be a good time to do it. So I'll keep my fingers crossed.
Yeah, you just got to keep an eye on the model, see when something perks up there. And if it's a weekend, that's even better.
That's right. So, all right. Well, I think that's pretty much all I had to talk about and to bring up. Did you have anything else in terms of tomorrow's setup or Saturday, either one?
No, it's of all our discussions we've had so far, this one's definitely the most borderline in terms of, severe probabilities and severe risk. I say that there'll be a tornado warning tomorrow. You watch, you get that one storm that hooks further right and starts heading due south. You never know what it might do. But I think this is probably one of the more stable setups, or the least appealing in terms of getting out there and chasing and expecting to see anything big structure wise or things of that nature. But it doesn't mean it won't satisfy an itch if you get out there and see something.
Right, and it did look, from what I looked at several different models in terms of the reflectivities and the shear vectors. And it looks like, typical Virginia setup. If you get on the cells, within the first hour or two that they go up, you can see some discretes and some features. But after about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, they're going to line out.
That'd be my concern. It's just getting lines and not just turning into a muddled mess up there with no discernible. You might see a bit of a shelf cloud forming, but that'd be the extent of things.
Right. So I may be tempted to go out. I may try the 460 corridor tomorrow. Lynchburg, in that area. We'll see how things transpire. But I've got some time because it's not an early setup, so I could probably wait till well after lunch before I decide what to do here.
Yeah, it's a shame the timing of this isn't the timing of the last system that came through here at 8 o'clock in the morning with those dynamics. If that was this system coming through at 5 o'clock in the afternoon with 80-degree temperatures, then we'd be talking a whole different ball game. But it is what it is. Yeah. Beggars can't be choosy in this time of year, especially, right? Yeah, exactly. Yep. All righty. I think that covers for tomorrow, and of course Saturday we're pretty much X'd off in terms of chasing here in Virginia. We'll keep an eye on the models and try to give you a little bit more ahead of schedule when we're going to do one of these hangouts. This was like a last minute thing where we decided it was probably worth talking about, but again, being a marginal setup and with the restrictions we've mentioned, that it's not going to be a ballistic setup tomorrow, but there'll be a storm or two that may be worth taking a look at. So go ahead. Well, I was just saying, all it takes is that one severe wind gust and that one big hailstone for somebody to say, see what happened here? Exactly. So until next time, we'll sign off here, and we'll keep our fingers crossed and keep chasing. All right, y'all take care out there.